Welcome to the channel. My name is Matisse. Today, we're going to talk about Iran. At least we're going to do an introductory video about this country. So ever since I've tried to revitalize this channel, I have started a series of videos dedicated to like the major faiths and religions from across the world. I have started with Judaism. On the other hand, I wanted to do like a series of videos dedicated to my personal opinions on anything that's floating around in the ether. I'm also working on a couple of books. I have a new video in the works for James Clapper's Fact and Fears, dedicated to the end of the Cold War. And why not add like another series of videos that I can work on? And the first country, as I mentioned earlier, that I wanted to put a spotlight on is Iran. That personally, I've always had a fascination with this country. I grew up in the 80s in the US. Now, I've always felt a great deal of curiosity for this country. This stems way back when I was a kid in Los Angeles. I used to live in this apartment complex, and then out of nowhere, many people from this country, from Iran, when I was a kid, I had no idea where they were from, started moving in, and visibly they were very different to how everyone else was in the building. Like, I grew up in a very multicultural context, but people from Iran really stuck out, especially how the women would dress, and like they would have very different mannerisms and stuff like that. Now, as a kid, I was completely oblivious to the fact of the whole Islamic Revolution and basically all these people that had arrived and started moving in all across the country, but in my case in Los Angeles, were asylum seekers. And I remember them being very well liked in the building, and they would always be at brunch on Sundays. At least two or three of my babysitters, and I'm going to probably butcher her name, but the one I remember the most, I think her name was First Day, were Iranian women. And I would go to their apartments and see that things were very different there, and they would eat very different food. So that always stuck with me. And as I grew up in the late 80s and early 90s, still a kid, I always saw this negative representation of Iran as a state in US media and very much in the political discourse. And yes, as a young kid, I was really into politics. I found it fascinating. And the thing is, like, at least in my mind, this negative representation of this state that was super evil. And I always contrasted it with these really nice people that used to live in my building. Progressively, I started to understand why they were living in Los Angeles and how they ended up there in the first place. And then early 2000s, we have Iran lopped into the axis of evil with Iraq and North Korea. Three countries that have nothing to do with each other. At least their regimes, because Iran does have something to do with a certain part of Iraq. That aside, we'll dive into that in a future video. And the thing is that back when I was studying in the early 2000s, Iran was like one of the main things in international relations that you would have to read about. Now, it has been a while. It's been more than 15 years that I have sat down and tried to study up on Iran. And it's a daunting task. Like with Iran, you always feel like you're jumping into the deep end. It's very, very complex. I'm dealing with this situation where you have to back up and read up on other things to understand what the hell I'm reading about in the first place. And this is taking place within the context of January 2026. So we have these massive protests in Iran at the moment where things are going terribly for the people. So this is just going to be a brief introduction, but yes, I'm going to do a series of videos on Iran, on the history of the country, on the politics, on the whole situation on an international level. I hope you guys like it. So see you guys next time. Bye.